I go all the way back to those stories and think about resiliency and integrity and working hard and staying positive. And I just hope I've lived up to some of those things.
Ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Welcome to another episode of the Bigger Than Food podcast. I'm your host, Apollo Woods, and I'm getting better at these openings. I'm finding a better way to introduce our guests. Y'all know I've been practicing this thing every week, but we have another amazing guest. Here on the Bigger Than Food podcast, we talk more about their journey, how they got to where they've gotten to. We talk to influencers and leaders out in the community, and today is no different. We have Zac Craig, who is our ultimate leader and ambassador for tourism here in Oklahoma City. So when y'all hear me talk about tourism, this is the guy that that I serve with, and we talk about some great things. So Zac, welcome to the Bigger Than Food podcast.
It's a delight to be here, Apollo. Thanks for having me. I always love this space at the launch pad. Thunder's done a tremendous job here, so good to be with you a little while, just talking to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I start off with the hardest question. Who is Zac? Not in your capacity, but who is Zac as the person?
Yeah, I to answer that, I think I go back home, and so I go back to Shawnee and Seminole and my family, and really the upbringing that I had, predominantly in Seminole. Okay. And so the learning lessons from my father and my mother during that time just really permeated through me. So to answer your question, I'm a husband. Okay. I'm a father of two little girls, two little princesses, and then also am someone that's passionate about this community, and that's me.
Love it. Okay, so some folks watching or listening probably have no idea what Shawnee and Seminole is. I think probably the safe assumption is folks are like, it's Oklahoma, so it's probably some small rural town. You probably ride horses. So growing up, how would you describe growing up in the Shawnee, Seminole area?
Yeah, so I mean, it was simple. I mean, that's the best way to describe it. Okay. I know that you spent a lot of time growing up in southern Oklahoma. And Shawnee and Seminole, if you don't know, that's within 45 miles to the east of where we sit right now. Okay. So really, I call this region home. Okay. But growing up there was simple. My mother was a school teacher. My dad was an insurance agent. Okay. We knew everybody in town. It was that quintessential story of you leave the front door unlocked, you play with everybody. And community was a big part of that. And so that was a big learning lesson during that time.
Okay, so growing up, what is a memory that has left an impression on you growing up in Seminole, Shawnee area?
I think the camaraderie of the people that were there, the civic leaders, the school teachers, the principals, the different business owners, and how they rallied together to support each other. Okay. And so to me, you just take that and you probably exit by about 100 when you come to Oklahoma City. Yeah. But I think that foundation is really important for any thriving community is to do things together.
Yep. Okay. So small town, leave your door open. I remember those days too. You know what?
Yeah.
I moving back to Oklahoma, I forgot about that part. There are times where I've not locked the door or left the door wide open, and I say I'm gone. Like I'm deep into a meeting or hanging out with friends, and I remember I left my door open, and I didn't worry about it. I had a neighbor that would say "Oh yeah, you left your door open, but I just thought you were at home," but nothing happened. One time when I first moved here, it was real windy. We get that in Oklahoma. The gate just flew wide open. I didn't know, but my dog had a chain on with my information on it. Neighbor called me at work. I thought something was wrong. Neighbor called me at work, and she was like, "Hey, well, we got her here, and when you get home, she'll." And I was like, but again, living in a big city like Houston for so long,
yes,
you forget about that small town feel of kind of looking out for each other, right? You forget about that until it actually happens.
We've talked about this some, offline, but I moved here from Atlanta, lived in Dallas, lived in Charlotte, and there comes a tipping point, I think, with any community where you stop doing those things. And perhaps you don't know your neighbors. Okay. And unity breaks down, and really doing things together breaks down as well. And I just hope for Oklahoma City, we're going to organically grow and strategically grow over the years, but I hope we never lose that. I really do.
So you opened up the door where I was going to in terms of going from where you're from and raised.
Yeah.
So as you got to the place of, let's say, preparing for in high school.
Yes.
Did you have an idea of what you wanted to do? Did you know where you wanted to go, or what was going to be next for you in like growing up in a small town?
Yeah. So the answer is no. The answer is, as I grew up, I was focused on sports. Okay. Now, if you look at me today, you would say, "Are you sure about that, Zach?" But I was focused on predominantly playing football and playing sports. That was the passion. My uncle, my father, Dad played at OU. Chad, my uncle, was drafted by the New Orleans Saints.
Okay, wait a minute. Now, in this conversation, I'll probably stop you on some stuff.
That's good.
This is the part I didn't know. I knew you were athletic and played sports. Okay, let's roll it back. Okay, so how was that for you growing up? It's still small town, right?
Yes.
But you had this direct tie to folks who operate at a higher level.
Yes.
So how was that for you growing up, knowing you had a family influence of high level performing athletes?
Well, my dad was a high school football coach before he became an insurance agent. So he was the head football coach at Shawnee High School. And so
while you were there?
I was young, and while I was there, he was the head football coach.
A little pressure, huh?
A little bit, but I think what you learn, Apollo, is you learn discipline, you learn persistence, you start learning these traits that sports serves people as they're committed to them. As we said here in the Thunder Launchpad, and that's what I learned. I learned that from my dad's teachings, but also watching Chad and watch him persevere through college and persevere through that experience with the NFL. Okay.
So did that have an influence on you wanting to do more with sports?
Yeah, no doubt. And so during the summers growing up, junior high, high school, it was a small, it's class 3A football team. It was small, but that program has always been highly successful. The coach is still coaching. He's the winningest coach in Oklahoma history. His name's Mike Snyder. And so a lot of influences from a sports perspective on me at that time. And so I was locked, tunnel vision into sports and really going to the next level, which eventually I did at the University of Tulsa to participate and play sports there.
What years were you at TU?
It was mid to late 90s.
Okay.
So I know we've got a connection there.
Yeah, I was there from 97 to 99.
I know.
Yeah, this fly is getting crazy over here. We're there from 97, 99. So so how was that transition going from Shawnee, small town, to Tulsa? It's a big city, but the university is still small.
Yes.
So how was that transition going from that smaller community to essentially a bigger city?
You say that with the bigger city, and so it was a bigger city.
Yeah.
But I think it was probably all God's path as far as going from a small school system to really, from a college perspective, a small school system at the University of Tulsa. Again, where there was unity, there was walkability, people knew each other. And so it was all God's path, in my opinion. But There was a little bit of change as I drove Highway 99 north and got to Stroud and got on the turnpike, and then all of a sudden I felt like I was driving to the big city. And I'll put this in perspective. Growing up, I always would come. We deemed Oklahoma City the city.
Right.
If you're from Shawnee, you come up here and you go to Crossroads Mall and you shop. And
for us, we went to Lawton. And then when we come, this was back when I think the speed limit was like 55 on the highway.
Yeah.
So it would take us about a little over 2 hours to get to Oklahoma City. But we were like, we're going to the city. My mom had a cooler in the back of this Nissan Sentra, had sandwiches and chips and sodas.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. So it's very comparable. So, Tulsa in general was just different and exciting to me. But I felt comfort in that small college at the University of Tulsa.
Okay, so when you were thinking about making a decision of where to go, right? Because for me growing up, it was basically one choice. Everybody in Duncan wanted to go to OU, or they wanted, we had a little bit of small faction we're going to OSU. But at the time, Cameron University was the university a lot of people were trying to go to as well. So when you were thinking about the next step to go, do you remember the process of making the choice and leaving the comfort of your community and the small neighborhood and family? Do you remember that decision-making process for you at that time?
I do. It was really all sports driven at that point. And so I got hurt my senior year. And so I had looks from SMU. I had looks from Baylor. I had looks from Rice, speaking of Houston. So it's kind of these really great schools, but more of a mid-tier school when you think from an athletics perspective, specifically football. And those were the looks. As I got hurt and some people fell off, UCO came into the mix. Missouri Southern came into the mix. And so as it got, competitive, Tulsa was always there for me. And Coach Dave Rader, who's now a state senator, I still call him Coach, was there as well.
That's the same coach?
Uh-huh.
He was there when I got there. I was an intern. My undergrad major was sport administration. So I was an intern, and we had to clean out those rooms in the bottom of the old stadium that had not been open in years. So he was the coach at that time. That's a small world, man.
Really?
I didn't make that connection that was the same coach.
Yeah, I've got, not to digress and go backwards, but just briefly, Mark Van Kuren is a representative out of the Owasso area for the state of Oklahoma. He was my high school basketball coach. I call him Coach V. And Coach Rader's now state senator. So when I see them at the Capitol or at a reception, I'll still call, he's Coach Rader, and that's Coach V. But it was, it was really an easy selection for me when you look at the caliber of the school and you look at their program, and then you look at, the desire for people to include you and want you.
I think that's one interesting fact about Oklahoma is that you could have, they could be out in the community doing one thing, and then you have this connection to them if they are, whether they're elected or they're running a company. The accessibility of people in Oklahoma is so different than like living in like Texas as long as I did.
Really is.
Because there's so many more people.
Yes.
But here, although we're a growing city, growing population, it still is always so interesting that I can walk down the street or I'm going to a coffee shop and I'm seeing somebody that I probably saw on TV, and they're just so accessible, right? And I look at those as opportunities for me to create a connection and learn more, because in a bigger city, we don't have, you're not going to often have those opportunities to access people who are probably doing something that you want to do. So that's one of many things I could say that I'm gonna call this the fly catcher episode, because this fly is trying to annoy us today.
It really is.
Okay, so then, all right, so you're at TU, getting ready to graduate. what's next on horizon for you? What are you thinking about next? Because you mentioned Dallas and Atlanta and other places. That's a bigger leap, right? What's on the horizon for you?
So what happened is I'd say
hold on, pause real quick. We're gonna do something old school.
Okay.
Step away. I'm gonna get my thing. I'm trying to swap this thing. That's the good thing about not doing this live. This is live.
We'll knock it away, Apollo.
What the heck is going on? And watch now it's gone.
Yeah, nowhere to be found.
All right. Okay. That's crazy. Okay.
Oh,
all right.
man.
So let's pick it back
You
up.
have to cut that.
Oh, definitely will. Okay, so you're thinking about the next step. Get ready to graduate, and what are you thinking about what's on the horizon for Zac next?
So let me back up just a few years, and I'll show you how I got into this hotel hospitality space. And this probably goes back to high school, but it really took place in college as well. So back to Shawnee, my grandmother in Shawnee, about this time of year in July, she loved to get out of this hot weather of central Oklahoma and travel to the Northwest.
Okay.
And so we would take trips to San Francisco, we'd take trips to Tahoe, Seattle, Vancouver, that area. And talk about eye-opening. I think Tulsa's eye-opening for an Okie, Central Okie guy,
the hills, the
to
mountains,
just be dropped into San Francisco and just be captivated by what's going on and wanting more and staying in hotels there and experiencing really the front of the house of those hotels.
So y'all driving there?
Flying.
You're flying. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But just to have those experiences, starting in high school, continued in college, spring break or summer, again, back in July, we would always go. I got really intrigued with the hotel industry and the hospitality industry. And there's one other influence. There's a guy named Roger Helms that runs a really prominent third party in the hotel space called Helms Briscoe. He's from Alva and Shawnee. My grandmother and his parents were bridge partners. So during this time, you know, my nanny is who I would call my grandmother, would say, Zac or Zachary, you need to look into what baby Roger's doing. He's doing some tremendous things. He set up shop in Scottsdale. And as soon to find out, he's got an empire in this space. But those were the two influences. So back to the University of Tulsa, when I decided I was not going to be able to go on to any next level in the college space, in the football space, I started looking at hotel and hospitality jobs. That's when I found OSU. My degree was business and marketing at Tulsa, but I wanted to continue on with my education at their hospitality school, and I was kind of hooked by those two experiences and because of my grandmother.
All right, so then I want you to describe what it was like. Do you remember your first flight when your grandma was like, "We're going to make these trips to get out of Oklahoma"? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think probably my first flight was with them again. She loved to travel. It was actually to Orlando. And it was probably when I was a kid. But yeah, subtly, I remember being super nervous for that first flight, and I believe it was Orlando.
Okay, so thinking back, how impactful was it for you having the opportunity to fly and travel or road trip and see other parts of the world that we often probably just see in books, read in books, or see on TV? So how was it for you growing up in a small community to get a chance to see the world differently?
It's amazing. I mean, again, I'll go back to the example of San Francisco. You leave Will Rogers World Airport, you connect, you drop in SFO, and the bustling city, the diversity of the city, the diversity of the cuisine, major sports, ocean, mountains, attractions like I've never seen before, languages maybe like I've never experienced before. I'm a very curious person by nature. It was just awe-inspiring, and I wanted more.
Yeah. So when you I have to think about as many people I know, especially my family. The furthest they probably traveled is probably within 4-hour radius of where they live. Like driving to Dallas, or maybe to Kansas City.
Yes.
If there was a casino, absolutely, somewhere like that, right? As far as they went. And then, like, even for me, when I moved to Houston, I didn't have family there. I mean, I had a childhood friend, but she ended up graduating. Our grandparents lived next door to each other growing up. But outside of that, it was just me being there.
Yeah.
And it opened up my mind to so many things, and the things I saw on TV began to really help me realize that this is actually a real possibility.
Yeah.
Right. And influence how I explored and journeyed and try to create connections and things like that. So it's interesting that when you talk about your grandmother encouraging, like, we're going to take these trips, and then it's led you into the hospitality space. Did you ever think those trips and how life was going that was going to lead you to that possibility now?
No, I mean, I wouldn't, and I think that's life, right? I think there's certain influential moments that during the time you're not certain what the trajectory is or the path, but as those foundational blocks keep getting built, you keep experiencing, different things outside of this market that's really intriguing from a visceral standpoint that I'm wanting more. And then she's telling me about Roger Helms and his success and how maybe there's an incredible pathway there, coupled with some other experiences. I really got hooked, and I decided, okay, I'm all in.
Okay. So then after Tulsa, graduate, get your master's at Oklahoma State.
Yes.
After the master's degree, what was next after that?
So I keep taking you a couple steps back,
but
at
connected.
Tulsa, so I concluded my last year of football, and football was a job. It's a job in itself when you play collegiate athletics. And so once I got done with that job,
all my roommates, we stayed in John Mabee Hall.
Yeah.
All my roommates play football. My line brothers in fraternity both play football.
We've talked about John Mosley.
Yeah. Actually, he's here. He's this week.
Is he?
His family reunion in McAllister. I'll see them actually today. But so in this competitive nature of athletics, and you do this stuff, I'm gonna put a pin on that. I'm gonna let you finish because I'm getting ahead of myself in completing your story.
So I'll go back to it. I've got hooked because my grandmother, those experiences. So I want to get in the hotel industry. Okay. And so my first hotel job was working as a valet at the Doubletree Hotel, Warren Place at 61st and Yale. Okay. Worked 6 to 4 shifts, 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. shifts, and that was the first gig. Also, on the weekends, I worked bell shifts as a bellhop. And then also on certain Saturdays or Sunday, at the time, they had that elite level, the executive business travel level. And I worked a split shift as a concierge. So I'd come in at 5:30 in the morning. I'd set up continental breakfast for people. I'd break it down. I'd do inventory. I'd come back. I'd serve cocktails at night for these people. And that was really the start of my journey in the hotel space. Okay. And then I went over to OSU to go ahead, and I worked at a select service hotel at the front desk at that time, but then pursued my master's in hospitality administration and pursued and completed a thesis, writing about a 300-page thesis during that time too, which I haven't talked to you about.
Okay, so you are an athlete. You are a D1 athlete, competitive. travel experiences, but what made you decide you wanted to be you wanted to do valet? Not saying there's nothing wrong with it, but I think the assumption is that someone that has some experiences and some background, like, why would you choose to be a valet? And I'm asking in the way of context of how you saw that opportunity for you to break into hospitality.
I want to start the ground up. I wanted to learn a business from the ground up.
Okay.
You know, I was all in on, at that point, specifically the hotel business.
Okay.
I wanted to learn from the ground up what was going on. And so I thought it was a great entry point of being able to learn things from a foundational perspective. This is just my perspective. Eventually, if I was going to lead valets or lead people on the front line, then I just wanted to have some of that experience for myself.
Okay. So what would you say your takeaway from doing valet and concierge services was impactful into the next part of your career journey?
Well, first, it was hard work.
Yeah.
And number two, just to
run a lot
some
to get those
humor
cars
in it, I wasn't that good at it, Apollo. Just to be candid, okay. I mean, I wrecked a few cars.
What?
And so I learned quickly that was not going to be my future.
Okay.
Like, I wasn't going to move to Las Vegas and be a professional valet at Caesar Palace, which
you're wrecking cars.
Yeah, that wasn't my path. But I think, again, these foundational building blocks, I think you learn teamwork. I think you learn a lot of intangibles about hotel business. A lot of businesses are just big teams working together. And so if I can give somebody an incredible arrival experience and be very pleasant to them and really try to help them upon arrival and departure, specifically as a valet, I'm one of your first touch points to the city, to that hotel. You're welcoming people that are not used to being there, and so they're a little bit of reluctance to reach out. And if I can make people feel comfortable doing that and adding value, then that meant a lot. And so I think that was a good takeaway too.
You know what? As you describe that, it makes a lot of sense when I look at your leadership style in tourism here. That's the approach you've taken, right? It's trying to understand a person's experience. When we have our conversations and meetings, it's about what are they going to experience when they get here, when they leave. That makes them want to come back, and not just from the visitor experience, but in terms of the collaboration with commissioners and team members. So it makes more sense to me now to hear you say that. So then you get your master's, then you have an opportunity to leave Oklahoma.
Not quite yet.
Not quite yet.
Yeah, I'm working in this select service hotel in Stillwater.
Okay.
And received that degree and ready for the next step.
So you're further away from home. You're from Shawnee and Tulsa and then Stillwater.
Went to Stillwater.
You're a little further away from home.
And actually did a little bit of a boomerang, but just started putting my resume out and putting feelers, not only in the state of Oklahoma. To be candid, I didn't have an overwhelming desire to stay at that time.
In Oklahoma?
The Renaissance just kicked off. If you think of mid-'90s to late '90s to right around 2000, is the time period we're talking about. And so I was ready to go see some of the things that I saw as a kid. But I did put resumes out in Tulsa, in Oklahoma City, and I landed. It was a Medallion hotel, then it was a Sheraton hotel, and it was a Westin hotel, I'm sorry, and then it was a Sheraton hotel. But I landed at the Westin Oklahoma City. And I landed in a small group sales manager capacity. And that was my first entry-level sales manager in that hotel, and did that a year and a half before leaving the state. But that was my first step.
So then what catapulted the jump? And I'm because I think we probably related in this, because you kind of alluded to it. if you're from here, especially you live in a small town, you got this. Some of us have a desire, like I got to get out of here. Right. I was the guy that said that when I graduate from high school, I'm not coming back to Oklahoma. Like I was dead set when I was the person that I'm living in Houston for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But things happen. God has a way of getting our attention. We come back home and still doing great things. But so when you were like, I'm ready to go, and when you found the opportunity, where was that first opportunity to go? Well, when you had that opportunity, what was the process you were going through in preparing to leave? What was familiar?
Yeah, I was looking at different markets. I'd been in that role for a year and a half. I actually was looking at 2 or 3 different places, just eager to leave and experience. I had a mentor that I've already developed that had left Oklahoma City and went to Southwest Florida, and specifically, ready for a culture shock, went to Sanibel and Captiva Islands.
Where's
that?
That
is north of Naples, off the coast. And at the time, it was actually an internal move with the company. And Tom asked me to actually follow him. And so I put my name in the hat a couple places, but I ended up left one March day when it was chilly in Oklahoma City, and drove all the way down to South Florida, and was an island boy, and stayed an island boy on Sanibel and Captiva Islands, where we had 6 resorts, 2 golf courses that we managed. It was incredible. Just the different exposure of that, and loved it at that time, and actually stayed down that area for about 7 years.
So how was that conversation with your family? What did your parents think about you making that big jump to Florida?
Well, Dad was great with it. As you can imagine, it was traditional. Dad was great with it, excited for the journey ahead. Mom was quite saddened, as you can imagine.
Mine did the same.
But we were just really thrilled about the opportunity, and so I went.
So when I told my mom, I applied at 2 universities. Morehouse in Atlanta and TU, because my big brother, he was going there, big role model for me. I applied there, and then I was going to Morehouse. I got accepted. And then I told my mom, she was like, I don't want you to go. It's too far. I'm never going to see you. And so in my head, I'm 17 years old. I'm like, I want to go to Atlanta. I had no clue how I was going to get there. I applied, I got accepted. I was never thinking I was going to be accepted to this university in a whole nother state. And I don't even think I even told them I applied to Morehouse at all. Got accepted, didn't go, chose TU. I didn't tell my mom I was going to Houston until it was time to move back into the dorms.
Oh, wow.
She asked me, never forget this, sitting in the living room, she goes, when do you move back into the residence halls? And I said, I'm not. She looked at me like, so I'm going to Houston. And then she just walked into the kitchen.
Oh, wow. Not saying a word.
Not saying a word. And I don't think, she wasn't mad at all. I think it was that surprise of like, he's going. I think she probably realized at that point, he's going. And so left and went to Houston. So it's always interesting to hear when people ask their parents, especially in small towns, or you're in a tightly knitted community, that you're the one to go, right? Did you think either your parents or people around your family suspect that you would be the one to go?
Yeah, probably. I was kind of the gypsy of the group, and I think in a good way. But my sister she's older than me. She was on a different path. She went pre-med, went to OU, went to the osteopathic school in Tulsa. And then here's Gypsy Zac. What is he doing? And, I had a plan. I'm methodical. I've thought through it quite a bit. But, I don't think it was quite the surprise. But, there was many teary moments with my mother, as you could imagine.
So you're there in Southwest Florida for 7 years.
7 years.
Describe the change in scenery and how that impacted your personal and leadership development? Because that was a long drive.
Yeah, oh yes. Yeah,
And
for sure.
You were there 7 years.
Yes.
Figuring it out.
Yeah, it was amazing. There's 6 resorts. I mentioned 2 golf courses. One of the resorts had 600 accommodations.
Okay.
There was Hilton timeshare offices. There was interval ownership. There was traditional hotel keys. There was villas. There was 2 marinas. There were island excursions going out every day.
The stuff that you flip through magazines and see.
It was such a cultural difference from Oklahoma City.
Okay.
And even in a hotel path, it was a totally different sell and a totally different exposure. It was, we're a destination, just to be candid at this point. But at that point, we weren't quite in Oklahoma City. This was a full-fledged destination sell. And so the one thing that I really started taking note of was the Convention and Visitors Bureau's role within communities and how powerful they were at that time. And so that's one of those foundational blocks that I started saying, what is this CVB? They actually call it a VCB down there. But what are these destination organizations all about? So the bug for even how I got here started back in the early 2000s during my time in Naples, Sanibel, and Captiva Islands. From a leadership perspective, different area of the country, different exposure to cultures, different leadership styles, different people. There were associations that were a part of all these interval ownership capacities of these resorts. And so you do a lot of observation and learning, through that. The marketing side of the industry really came through. So we started looking at, media buy schedules and working with ad agencies, and all that exposure was new to me. It was before social media. But all of that, I'm just, again, a curious person, just soaking in and wanting more.
Yeah, Florida is a vacation place. It's a tourism state. So, whether it's cruise ships, it's fishing, the main thing I remember about Florida growing up is Marlins and the Miami Dolphins. Because I'd watch TV on Saturdays, fishing shows, and I see this marlin or this whale. That's how I saw it. So in Florida, that was your first introduction. Was that your first introduction to what the role travel bureaus or visitor convention bureaus actually had in hotel and the leisure space?
Not the first. Oklahoma City was really the first.
Okay.
Sandy Price was still at the Convention Visitors Bureau moons ago when I started this hotel journey. They were in the connected building. We called the mall area. That's adjacent to what is now the Sheraton. Where Mahogany's is.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They were actually in that space, and so I saw them, but I was only here for a brief period of time. I was there for 7 years, and
so let me clarify. So Florida was probably the opportunity you got to be able to connect the dots.
Fully.
Okay.
Yeah, and fully. And it was a fully built out team. And I was growing in my leadership. And so that was the place where this started getting really intriguing to me. And it was intriguing because even, 20 plus years ago then, I saw this tremendous sense of purpose that destination organizations had.
Okay. So it's Shawnee, Tulsa, Stillwater, Oklahoma City, Southwest Florida.
Yeah.
And then Atlanta, right? Atlanta comes into the picture.
Not yet.
Not yet. So after Southwest Florida, what was next after Southwest Florida?
So I'd been with that same organization for some time and was looking for future growth. And was looking for growth really anywhere. I was still Gypsy Zac, open to opportunities and exploring.
I won't call you Gypsy Zac.
Please don't.
I don't.
And we didn't have children at the time. And so I got close to doing several different things, staying in South Florida, perhaps moving over to Miami, going to Orlando, going to other places. But I landed, and I had another influence that worked for Omni Hotels and Resorts. And they had a position open in Las Colinas, Texas, in the DFW Metro. And it was a sales director over that hotel. I put my name in the hat, and that's where I moved next.
Okay. Do me a favor, kind of turn cat corner so the camera gets more of your face in there. Okay, so, all right. Shawnee, Tulsa, Stillwater, Oklahoma City, Southwest Florida, and an island. And there, you're coming back toward the center of the country to Dallas.
That's right.
Okay. Eye-opening experience in Florida. Dallas is not far away. So what was the transition for you from Southwest Florida to Dallas? And what year time frame was that?
Yeah, so I moved to Dallas in 2008, I believe.
Okay.
So 2008, just on the tails of that recession that took place, is if you kind of think back to that time period, Dallas was tremendous. Really, the first opportunity to work in a first-tier city.
Okay. You said that was the Omni?
Is it Omni? Yeah.
The Omni, the downtown Omni?
No, it hadn't been built. Okay. They broke ground while I was there.
Okay.
So Omni joined Omni. The Omni of that time was not the Omni that we know today.
Okay.
That company was really a historic hotel company.
Okay.
They had a portfolio of, let's call it 20 to 25 historic hotels.
Okay.
They were really not that well known in the space. People, you wouldn't go on the street and say Omni, and they wouldn't think that's a hotel company like they do right now.
Okay.
And so it was really neat to be with a privately owned company that was based in Dallas, that was really growing, that had a lot of capital behind it, that was still really family friendly. And so from a cultural perspective, moving from islands to Dallas and dealing with the chaos of Dallas.
You go from water,
concrete jungle.
You're right. To a landlocked
concrete jungle.
A landlocked city. Except you can go hop some ponds and go to the lake, but it's not like ocean.
Really wasn't. And so that was just a kind of a cultural reset, as you can imagine. But also being in just a thriving, depending on the pocket that you lived in, young, bustling city was really fun, and we really took advantage of that as well. And so that was on the personal side. The professional side of it is all of a sudden you get exposed to these major events. And the marketing play, the international play that Florida had with their destination organization, whether it was the Dallas CVB or the Mid-City CVBs or Visit Fort Worth. Fort Worth is not like it is today. Being right there at this unbelievable airport. We served as hosts as the NBA All-Star Game while I was there. We served host as during the Super Bowl. We actually hosted at our hotel the Green Bay Packers after they won the Super Bowl in Dallas during that time. And so I started seeing these destination organizations in a different light of coordinating these massive major, not only citywide conventions and sporting events, but marquee events that put the spotlight on a city and that created economic impact. And so that was a great lesson learned.
And those are, like, we look at the different markets having to really adjust and switch because it's the natural attraction of Florida and, whether it's culture, food, port cities, and all that stuff. It's almost, I'm going to assume, it's a bit easier because people are wanting to come to Florida. Whereas in Dallas, it's not saying that people don't want to come to Dallas. Of course, they're known for the Mavericks and the Cowboys and stuff like that. And, but you're having these large, massive events come to Dallas. Why do you think those type of big events, or All-Star and Super Bowl, were coming to Dallas during the time while you were there?
It's financial capacity to host them, and it's infrastructure.
Okay.
And then it's the experience, the testimonial of successfully executing events.
Okay.
So you can see some foreshadowing here for Oklahoma City, but that was really the recipe for it. I want to go back to what your comment about Florida. It's kind of unique. I think when we got to Florida, I was really leading and overseeing some independent resorts, and the challenge with Florida, and they've got great overriding appeal from a leisure destination perspective globally, but there's a huge sea of sameness as it relates to destinations if you don't differentiate yourself. Meaning, great, you've got infrastructure and you're on the beach. Well, there's hundreds of miles around there that has that sea of sameness. So from a destinations perspective, what makes Sanibel and Captiva Island so different from Naples or Marco Island or Key West? Or we competed a lot in the Caribbean at that time. That was part of our competitive set. So St. Thomas or Puerto Rico, especially places you didn't have to go to get to have a passport. And so the competitive set there versus where we are here is quite different. But there's a lot of beaches out there and a lot of resorts. And so, to make sure that you, from a marketing perspective, differentiate yourself is uber important.
So you had that's interesting. That's something I hadn't thought about. So, I mean, you were having to consider the Caribbean in your
comp set.
In your separating your experience from the hundreds of miles of beaches in Florida. You're having to think about the Caribbean islands,
no doubt,
and how close you are. Well, people to consider you over just let's just go to Antigua.
We so down there from a leisure perspective and from a group, let's just talk about group. You think about meetings and conventions in Oklahoma City, and that's kind of the sweet spot. But you can get more tactical than that. And down there, what a group looked like, especially on the islands that I represented, was continuing medical and legal education, incentive trips to reward corporations for a job well done, high-end associations that were considering going to St. Thomas, going to St. John, going to the Mexican coastline, going to the Dominican Republic, or keeping it perhaps stateside as well. And so that was the comp set. Okay.
Interesting. So then while in Dallas, you are getting a chance to see how it's like a different. Okay, so what did you carry over from Florida in your time in Dallas?
Yeah, so the Dallas, the shift was the traditional business traveler. So just the Monday through Friday business traveler and the bustle of that, and from a sales and marketing perspective, was penetrating those channels, which was totally different than those other channels. The citywide convention game came to play so much there. These marquee events and really working with entities like the NBA or the NFL and delivering these incredible events. That was something that you don't get exposure to on Sanibel and Captiva Islands, but you do get exposure in a first-tier city like Dallas. And so I think learning that a little bit more, but then also making people stretch and think about what is our media schedule. And now social media is off and running. And let's talk about the experience of the hotel. And as we pitch this, really treating this from a holistic experience, even maybe in a traditional business hotel. What does your food scene look like? What does the bar activity look like? And how can we be sure that they choose our hotel versus, for example, one of our main competitors was the Ritz-Carlton in Las Colinas at that time.
Yeah, Las Colinas was a place that a lot of people still want to be in Las Colinas.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you're thinking about the details of experience in Dallas, and all the business people that are coming, to Dallas, are kind of built in, but then also the commuter traffic. The relationship between Oklahoma City and Dallas is people are always going back and forth. I mean, that's just kind of how it's been, which makes us neighboring cities. And one thing you mentioned a few times, you talked about tier 1 city and those things. And so in terms of understanding the industry language, what does tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 mean in context of that industry language?
Yeah, so a lot of people use tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. I put it in context of the hospitality industry.
Okay.
And really how developed a market is to serve it. So if really your wheelhouse is meetings and conventions, then what does that footprint look like? How big's your convention space? How many hotel keys do you have? What kind of transportation infrastructure is around? What kind of off-site venues does a city have? Those type of things. Once you elevate and scale at a certain point, I'll put you in tier 1. And Dallas, if we've got any Dallasites listening, all due respect, I wouldn't put Dallas at the top end of that tier 1. I still wouldn't. Now, they've got some things in the pipeline that I think might get them there. But as we go further in my story, I would put Atlanta in probably that top tier once we get there. But that's how I treat tier 1 through tier 3.
Okay. I think people probably just by assumption are not thinking about Oklahoma City as a tier 1 city or the potential we have to become a tier 1 city, right? And what that looks like in terms of vision, and we'll get there. So then we talk about Dallas, the experience there in Dallas. I'm trying not to push you to Atlanta because I want to talk about Atlanta. So so once you left Dallas, what was next after Dallas?
I really enjoyed this Omni Hotels and Resorts company. They were growing. The hotel industry was changing. Over that course, the hotel industry used to be an owner and operator model. Meaning you'd have one person that would own and operate and maybe even the name or the hotel jargon is the flag on the outside of the building. Maybe that's all the same. But the hotel industry at the time was really changing to an asset-light model in that the owner, the operator, and the franchise were really starting to become 3 distinct separate entities. And then when you talk about the ownership side of it, you're really getting some really, really interesting ownership models. And when I say that, private equity was really coming into the mix. You had teachers' pension funds that were buying hotels to really leverage an ROI. And so those are 2 extreme examples, but the hotel business was starting to become really a buy, hold, sell strategy.
Almost sounds like real estate. Well, I mean, it is real estate.
It is.
Right?
It's real estate, but it's dynamic real estate. The whole model's really dynamic, different than a traditional real estate model. That started becoming the focus. The guest experience became a lesser focus. And
when the model started to change?
And I became less enthused with that model. Omni was one of the only companies that said, you know what, we still want to stick with this owner-operator flag model. And I wanted to grow with them. And so my boss at the time said, we've got an opening in Charlotte. And so he said, Zach, what do you think? And I'm going to tell you, I love the city of Charlotte. I can see a lot of similarities with Oklahoma City and Charlotte about where perhaps we're going. And so I put my name in the hat and I moved to Charlotte.
Okay. So
Gypsy hotelier.
I was gonna say that. So you're moving around a lot, and you're seeing a lot of you're putting all these experience in your bag.
Yeah.
Like, different places, different markets, many not similar markets. They all at this point are very different.
Yes.
And you're able to learn something and move on to the next one.
Yes.
Do you think so? You mentioned earlier at the time. You didn't feel like you had enough experience in the beginning. And then as you're getting all these different experience in different markets, are you starting to realize that your skill set is getting sharpened and you're feeling more confident about higher level opportunities within the industry?
Yeah, I think so. I think at the same time, I wanted more.
Okay.
I wanted to grow and learn, and I'm a sponge, so I just wanted to learn more.
Okay.
For Charlotte's example, on the drive over from Dallas to Charlotte, so I stop at a Applebee's or something in Birmingham, and on the way over, my boss, who's the general manager of the hotel, I became the leader of both sales and marketing at that hotel in what's called Uptown Charlotte, which is actually in downtown Charlotte. But we were set to host the Democratic National Convention.
Okay.
And so on the way over, he flipped me like a 50-page document and said, by the way, tomorrow, your first day, I need you to go down and work with Visit Charlotte, the destination organization, and start negotiating our part of the contract to host the 2012 DNC right here in Charlotte. And so another marquee event, separate than Super Bowl or All-Star games.
But you already had experience with, massive events and marquee events already.
I did.
But this was just different because it was a political event in nature.
And I'm going to tell you, up to this point, and I did other things in Atlanta, it was the most amazing, interesting event that I've ever been associated with. But there were major events, and that was fun. And then Charlotte is what I would deem a second-tier city.
Okay.
And it was up and coming at that time. And it was really an empire from a banking standpoint. And that town was jamming midweek.
Because that's where the NAIA big tournament there, the big HBCU tournaments and regional tournaments happen in Charlotte. I think, don't they consider Charlotte like the what is it? Something not Wall Street, but like Wall Street, big financial booming city, big entrepreneurial scene, been attracted to Charlotte.
The banking, so there's two things. Banking scene, Bank of America's headquarters.
Okay.
The Eastern Seaboard headquarters at the time for Wells Fargo. Major offices from the big 3 or 4 consulting companies, so E&Y, Accenture, all of these kind of white-collar jobs and compression, and New Yorkers flying in weekly and compressing the city. On the flip side, it was a hub of HBCU activity. Yeah. And we hosted an annual basketball tournament that was really a party, Apollo.
It is.
It was amazing. And really the more exposure to our HBCU community and learning a little bit more, that progressed in Atlanta, but that started in Charlotte.
Wow. Okay. So how was that for you? So Oklahoma has one historically a black college university, Langston University in Langston, Oklahoma. So now you're in almost like a mini Mecca region for HBCU games, reunions in Charlotte, right? So to see how even that destination or travel experience culturally for us is just different. It is.
Yes.
Yeah, there's business being done.
Yes.
But it feels like there's a constant day party. Make sure we have staff on deck and there's food going around. You got to have your adult beverages going in particular types because it is like that continually, right? So how did that help you look at a different travel leisure experience in your role there?
It's amazing. The CIAA is what I'm talking about, and that basketball tournament would come each and every year, I believe in February, to Charlotte. We hosted it for several years, and it was incredible because it was a mix of competition and pleasure.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about full on uptown Charlotte was rocking during those tournaments.
Yeah. Uptown and downtown.
And it was amazing. The engagement that we had, the exposure that I had to the HBCU community, and not only that tournament, but subsequent tournaments that we have where Bank of America Stadium is, where the Panthers play, where the Bobcats, now the Hornets play, was right across the street. It was great exposure to just different audiences and welcoming to Charlotte and just learning again another lens of this diverse thing that we call the hospitality industry.
So what surprised you about that weekend with that tournament?
Oh,
what did you not expect?
Well, I was unaware of it before that time, just candidly, and it was incredible as far as the build outs around that.
Okay.
And not only the tournament and the pride that people had going and winning and competing, but just the festive environment about this is a celebration.
Yeah.
This is a celebration of all the HBCUs. You got to think about Charlotte, and you've got a huge HBCU community in that region.
Yep.
And so there was just such an outpouring of the HBCU community that I've never experienced before, if you think about my previous path, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So then having that experience and understanding how you then you then consider planning culturally, right? Cultural program. I would say cultural programming with that tournament. And we've talked about this. And so then as you being exposed to that, then how did that start to have you think about in your role of being over marketing in that hotel? Did you start to think like, are we missing a market or are we, did you feel like we're missing a market, or is there something you can do to better penetrate a market?
No question. You start seeing a little bit of a trickle come in, and what you want to know is how much more is out there, and what channels are they booking through, and so and do we have presence in those channels, and so that's really the dialogue as you sit there and observe travelers coming in. You're wanting to tap into more market share, more opportunity. You're seeing the city around you evolve. You're seeing the Charlotte food scene evolve. I mean, it was one of my first times of really, really enjoying some deep South food in Charlotte, and that's really part of the destination experience that you want to push out. And so, from a customer-facing marketing perspective and sales channels perspective, it really opened your eyes to what else is out there and how can we penetrate it.
Absolutely. So then you're in Charlotte. Is Atlanta after that?
Yes.
Okay, let's get to Atlanta.
We got there.
Let's get to Atlanta. Okay, so then, because again, this is, how I'm seeing your story is like these things are culminating to being able to really add value in Dallas from being like in Florida.
Yes.
And then in Dallas, you're in Charlotte, adding value to that market. I don't know, hiring is it, but financial industry people in there, more of those white collar jobs in Charlotte, bustling city, but also getting exposed to more cultural activities through HBCUs and those tournaments. And then now so you're still in the East Coast region, in
Yes.
the southern region.
Yes.
And then now it's Atlanta. Like Atlanta is the mecca of a lot of blacks from civil rights movement, black culture, black-owned businesses, things like that in Atlanta. But now you're going from Charlotte to Atlanta. So how was that transition into Atlanta?
It was incredible. And I think I could lean just from a big city perspective on the experience in Dallas and some of those building blocks translated to Atlanta. The move from Atlanta, what happened was the largest, and still is, largest Omni hotel there is in Atlanta, in downtown Atlanta, right in the heart of Atlanta, 1,100
Wait, so
hotel keys.
these you're all still with the
Hotel space.
Omni
Yeah.
from
Dallas.
Yep. Charlotte, and then you're still with the
Still.
Omni. Oh, okay.
Still. And so they needed a leader of that hotel. It was the biggest in their portfolio,
Okay.
and I got a call for it.
Okay.
And moved the family to Atlanta. My youngest was born in Charlotte, so now I'm starting building a family. And so anyways, moved to Atlanta to this massive hotel in the core of Atlanta, connected. And just to put in perspective, our Omni is wonderful. It's 600 keys and 600 hotel rooms.
Okay.
And this just hotel was 1,100 hotel rooms.
Whoa.
Our convention center here is a total of 500,000 square feet of space.
Okay.
And it's wonderful for a city of our size. The Atlanta Convention Center was the fourth largest in the U.S. and totaled 4 million square foot of convention space. And so, and had the world's busiest airport 8 miles away.
Yes.
And had this incredible up-and-coming film scene in Atlanta. So that gave me some exposure to the film world as well. But this gave me great exposure to large-scale citywide convention events like I've never haven't experienced before in my life.
Oh, it's my scaling up.
Yeah. And that came with a lot of private events too. Final Fours, college football championships, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and the Georgia Dome were a couple blocks away. So SEC championships each and every year. It was quite the experience in downtown Atlanta. But the journey started in Atlanta as really the sales leader.
Okay.
And it ended different. I stayed there 7 years, but there was some progression in jobs during my time in Atlanta.
Okay. So when people think about Atlanta, Atlanta is not just, when you're doing events in Atlanta, it's not just in the city of Atlanta.
Right.
Like it's metro area, and sometimes it's beyond the metro area of Atlanta, with so many things going on all the time.
Yes.
Right. So you are at the Omni, and you talked about just in terms of advertising schedules, destinations, understanding where people are booking, the personality and characteristics, so that way you can kind of get ahead of it and be a part of it. But then it's Atlanta.
Yes.
In a scale this more massive. Are you still able to give that much attention to those things that you've done in other cities, or did did it require more of you to learn how to manage and then essentially compete in a market like Atlanta?
Well, you start scaling when you go to a hotel of that size. So just the in-house staff at that hotel was about 600 FTEs. And so you start relying on a lot of people, director of marketing, social, and a build out underneath that, a director of sales in a build out underneath that.
Okay.
The job got escalated as Omni continued to grow into a regional capacity of sales and marketing.
Okay.
And so that's really where the final stop was before here, in that I started overseeing multiple hotels in Atlanta, oversaw all the private event functions. There's a venue called the College Football Hall of Fame that Omni had a stake in. So that attraction, really oversaw a team that was over there, had hotels across the Southeast.
Yeah.
So 2 in New Orleans. It really stretched from New Orleans to northern Florida, back up through the Carolinas, including the hotel that I used to be on site for.
Okay.
Then I had a regional responsibility, and so really had
your
a regional sales
responsibility wasn't just like the Atlanta metro region, like it was a southeast region capacity.
New Orleans to Florida.
Okay. So then I would assume with that type of responsibility that you're still growing getting more heavily connected into destinations and tourism.
No doubt.
Visit Atlanta, whatever office they call it
No
there.
doubt.
And how did you start? Do you feel like at this point you're starting to come into your own style of this is how I lead and how I perform from these different experiences from different cities? Are you starting to feel like I kind of know what type of leader I am?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that the different people that I reported to at that point, the people that I worked with, the sales leaders that were in these different properties spread out the Southeast, I really did. I started getting comfortable with my style, with the way I approach things, kind of the participative nature that I have, while also holding people accountable. So really that delicate balance of autonomy and accountability and inspiration, and being really the example for all those people. That exposure in Atlanta and in all those other markets, and working hand in hand with Discover Atlanta as the headquarter hotel in downtown Atlanta, or New Orleans and Company, talk about another convention market, and talk about another incredible destination, and working with them or elsewhere, start learning a lot about, again, more about the destination organization space, and really my leadership style and what resonates with people.
Okay. So you're in that capacity, and then you have an opportunity to come back to Oklahoma.
We made it back.
We made the circle back. So Shawnee, Tulsa, Stillwater,
Oklahoma
City, Southwest Florida, Dallas, Charlotte, Atlanta, Oklahoma City.
That's right.
There's a lot of ground to cover in that, but all these experiences coming together, I would imagine you probably never saw this coming. A small town in Shawnee, right? Never. So then you have an opportunity to come back to Oklahoma City, where we're not a tier 1 city. We're a growing city, an emerging market, as I like to call us. Great potential, a lot of great things that just are not being uncovered. So you have all of these different experiences, and then it's, you know what, I think this might be an opportunity to consider Oklahoma. Why?
Well, and if you talk to my wife, Lindsay, she would tell you this. Throughout the whole journey, I stayed connected to Oklahoma City. You know, I tell people I'm from Shawnee, but being out of state so long, 20 plus years, I always told people I'm from Oklahoma City. Always. Zach, where are you from? Oklahoma City. Whether I'm traveling in
folks
Chicago
out of state
or
wouldn't
LA,
know, like,
they
what's
wouldn't
Shawnee?
know. No, they wouldn't know.
So
it was either Oklahoma or Oklahoma City, and it was always Oklahoma City. And I've seen the connotation and the change, and I clicked into the Oklahoman at least weekly. I clicked in a Steve Lackmeyer's OKC, his Central Chats, weekly. They did it every Friday. When I was down in Florida is when the news and the thunder was coming. I was cheering from afar. And so I always had this passion, this kind of badge of honor for the state, for the region, for the city. And I continue to see the city elevate itself. And I continue to think, man, maybe at some point this city is ready. And it just so happens organically that I was reading the Oklahoman and I saw Mike Carrier's retirement announcement. I mean, I saw it, and I knew the recruiting firm that was going to work on this, and I actually reached out to them. I put my name in the hat and I said, listen, I think this is where, really passion and craft and purpose comes together. And that was how I got here.
You said name in the hat. You've done that a couple times.
I have.
In your journey, you took it upon yourself to let people see you for the opportunity.
Yes.
Being intentional.
Yes.
And not just waiting for somebody to recognize you.
Yes.
Where did that spirit come from?
Athletics, perseverance, my parents.
Okay. So you get the and of course I'm on the commission at that time and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I remember though that period of time. So then when it became real that you were coming to Oklahoma City to replace Mike in this capacity and leading the tourism vision and effort in Oklahoma City, from all the experiences that you have, what made you excited to say, I'm coming home, but this is how you envision Oklahoma City being a destination market?
I thought there was such a great sense of purpose for me, and nothing against the hotel industry, nothing against private businesses. The business we work for is a nonprofit business, but nothing against that. But you get so involved in a private business of monthly P&Ls, monthly production, monthly profit margin. It's business,
numbers,
right? You get so entrenched in a hotel, in the four walls of a hotel, that sometimes you lose sight of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what this job delivered. It was a sense of purpose for the community, to elevate a community, but the cherry on top was, it was my community. Yeah. It was the same place that I kept telling people that had a neutral connotation when I said, I'm from Oklahoma City, and they just look at me, 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, maybe I had a chance to help elevate it, because to me, the foundation from decades has been laid with this place, beginning with Maps One and the turnaround. But I always look at it, this next generation, this next wave, our job, our duty is to amplify this message and extend the reach of Oklahoma City, so that the next generation, when you travel coast to coast, people know about us. Right. And so that's really my mission, and that's where really kind of a sense of pride that I have with the job. And 3.5 years later, nothing's certainly over. We're still beginning, but I'm really excited about some of the foundation that we're putting together.
Yeah, and you look at, this kind of reminds you when you mentioned being in Dallas, how different it was from Southwest Florida, but in Dallas, attracting those large events there, how that conversation just grew in that experience. And then, you have some built-in things in Charlotte, but also able to magnify those things too, and carrying those pieces forward, because people often don't realize, as Oklahomans, period, we could do a better job of I call it bragging, or just talking more about what we have to offer.
Yes.
So, yes, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder, and yes, we have baseball teams, and we have memorial museums, and we have one of the largest, races that happen here, the philanthropy at heart, all of these elements that we have. And what I enjoy hearing about your journey is someone that can understand how we can pull these pieces together, so more than just people who live here can see.
Yes.
Because this in tourism, if in people traveling, if they see it, then they'll want to come and experience it.
That's right.
But if they don't see it, they're not going to know there was something they missed if they don't see it.
Yeah, I think this next generational wave of travelers, they want to go deeper. They want to explore further. They want to check a few things off their box. Sure. But they want to get to know our neighborhoods, our restaurant scene, our people, and really our culture here in Oklahoma City, and even the state of Oklahoma. Candidly, we just haven't done a great job of marketing ourselves. And some of that is just being really kind of our humble kind of culture here in the state of Oklahoma. We've got a lot to brag about, as a state, as a city. But making sure that, people not only see just a rich Native American and Western culture and those assets,
Right.
they're there. You need to see that. But hey, by the way, did you know per capita, we've got one of the largest Vietnamese populations that there is.
Yep.
Go check out the Asian district. Let me give you a couple of restaurants, by the way, to go out and really explore and enjoy some amazing cuisine. And I could go on with 2 or 3 other surprises, but it really is cool when we talk to people and we talk about these hidden gems of Oklahoma City, how not only we're building intrigue for the destination, but we're actually changing perception about Oklahoma too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, from the Women's World Series, which, 4-time championship that's in Northeast Oklahoma City, to now the relationship we have with the Olympics that are in LA Olympics that are in 2028, and we're a partner in that. So all these things that are continuing to happen to bring eyes to our city. And I go back to just in your capacity, let me just ask you this. Can you now see how those prior experiences have led to this moment for you?
Yeah, I can. I really can. And that's the cool thing about God's path is the look back. Sometimes you get frustrated. Why am I in this position? Why is this happening? What lessons am I learning? Right? It's forest from the trees kind of talk. But I think the reflection, especially the more distance you get from an experience like in Florida or Dallas, the more that it makes sense. And so, whether it's diversity of thought or people, in Atlanta, I was like a mile or 2 from Morehouse, from the place that you almost went. And so
so you were near the AUC.
To have an incredible appreciation for the Divine Nine, for HBCUs, for the Celebration Bowl that took place in Atlanta, to have an incredible appreciation of diversity of cuisine, from how the region works together as a whole. As Oklahoma City grows, we got to be more region oriented. To have a great appreciation for development, for film. All those things come from previous experiences. And, I hope as I'm at different tables, I reflect back on those daily.
Yep. So I got 3 last questions for you. Okay. So first question, now these are tough questions.
Okay.
So it's going to require you to really self-reflect and think about it, right? All right. So first question would be, I may have 4. The first question would be, why would your dad be proud of you?
Whew, man. Ooh, these are tough.
I told you, man.
Yeah, I'm going to answer it, but I'll preface to say is that my father's side of the family, they were the first landowners in no man's land since 1909.
Wow.
So it goes back that whole time. It's a farming community between Guyman and Boise City.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's out there, Apollo. So they went through the Great Depression. They went through the Dust Bowl. They survived it. And so where I'm going with that, on the flip side, my grandmother, same grandmother, they were born and raised in Chandler, Meeker area, north of Shawnee. They didn't survive the Dust Bowl. They took our historic Route 66. They headed west. She was 3 or 4 at the time. And they went into the fields to pick fruit out there in that Bakersfield area where we've got such a tie with our communities. So they didn't survive. I go all the way back to those stories and think about resiliency and integrity and working hard and staying positive. And I just hope I've lived up to some of those things. I have not had any of the hardships that a lot of people have had. I haven't had any of the hardships that my great-grandfather had or my grandmother had during that time period. But hopefully I've learned from their hardships, and I've done it in the right way.
Good. All right, turn your shoulders a bit. Okay, second question. Why would your mom be proud of you? Told you it's going to be hard, man. Hard and self-reflective.
Oh, I think for being a good husband and father.
Okay.
You know, mom was a school teacher. She was the nurturer. She was the one. She's got 2 master's degrees. She's the one who took pride in education. That's why I continued to further my education, because of her inspiration. But the family was first and foremost.
Okay.
And taking care of my sister and myself and putting food on the table and being the provider and being the nurturer. I'm not saying I'm perfect at that by any means, Apollo, but I think the subtle conversations that I have from time to time with my 2 little princesses, I think that's what she'd be proud of.
Okay. All right. 2 more.
These are tough.
Hey, man. Make you think. Why would your wife be proud of you?
Oh. These are tough. I think for being a good father as well. I think being committed to the family and taking care of those young girls and being around and being playful and fun with them and being my sarcastic self from time to time. You know, I think that's what she'd be the most proud of me if you were to ask her.
Okay.
I need to ask her tonight. These are great.
Well, you asked over dinner. Last one. Why are you proud of yourself?
Oh, gosh. Man.
Do me a favor. When you answer, turn that way a little more so they can see your face.
Whew, that's the toughest one of them all. I think I'm proud to understand the power of relationships and to have deep relationships with certain people that are meaningful. They're not business oriented. They're purposeful. They're trying to help people. You know, my professional passion is to put more visibility on Oklahoma City, extend the reach, put OKC in the spotlight. Right. My personal passion is to turn back and lend a hand. My personal passion is to help people no matter what their stature is and where they're coming from. You know, and I try to do that in a number of ways. I love going to OSU. I'm a part of the hospitality advisory board there. 18-year-olds walking in, trying to figure it out. And I spend a lot of time up there just trying to help them. But I spend a lot of time when I go, and this is part of the hotel business too, when I'm in a hotel, greeting the housekeepers and walking through that hotel corridor and trying to put a smile on their face and say thank you. At the end of the day, they're just like us. They go home to a family and they're trying to provide. And I want to never lose that thought process of trying to help everybody no matter where they come from.
I want to answer this question differently. In the same vein about yourself. So with all these experiences and what you just described, why is Zac like that? Why are you that person?
I think it's the DNA and it's the upbringing, and it goes back to my father and your mother, and you learn a lot when you meet somebody's parents.
Yeah.
So much. Like mannerisms, I mean everything. Isn't it true when you meet somebody's parents? But I think if you would sit down with mom and dad, I think you'd know a lot about me. That nurturing side that I talk about my mother, kind of the emotional side, the crying side when I go to Florida. That's an incredible foundation. I mean, it's such a loving person and a helpful person. And that's the essence of my mom, is to love and to help, right? When I think about my dad's the jokester, my dad's the community civic person. If you go to Seminole, if you ask anybody in Seminole who Neil Craig is, they know. Involved with the Economic Development Committee. He's the one, they do a holiday light show. He created it. He used to do an airport event. He's involved with all the civic groups, Lion Club, but just trying to elevate the community. That's my dad. And so it came from them.
So I hope in our conversation today helps you probably already know this, talking it out loud helps you connect the dots that everything that you're doing was something, but there was intentionality, and it has shaped you to be the person ready to take on the role that you have now in your capacity in tourism here. For me, it's really a breath of fresh air to someone to be able to see what potential we have, but also backed up with skills and experience to get us there. I think Oklahoma City has great potential, and it's a great place for people to want to be able to invest in, but we have to see it.
Yes.
And then, as you know, just as you're going through these things that you put in yourself in position of, like, you were not passive, you were proactive, has given you the opportunity to be a better leader and a better person, a better, father and a husband and a son and those things. And so, proud of you, man.
No, likewise, your efforts on the commission, it's bigger than that, though. The investment in the community, what you're trying to do for the community, a lot of things that I just said about elevating all the community at the same time, putting the spotlight on all of Oklahoma City, not a given area. You're doing some really good things, so right back to you.
Appreciate it, man. Well, this is our episode with Zac Craig, who's the president, CEO, Visit OKC, our tourism effort. This is the visionary that's leading the way. Great team player, gets people involved. So what you're seeing, what you've seen as in our growth, and what you're going to see next is a lot of attributed to a lot of the work that you're doing from the experience you have. So thank you for coming back home and elevating our city. So this is our episode of the Bigger Than Food podcast. So to find us, you can definitely find us and watch this on our YouTube channel at Bigger Than Food. And the audio versions are being uploaded to any major podcast platform. So make sure that you subscribe and follow us. Your support helps us grow this platform as we continue to bring all the attention to amazing entrepreneurs and community leaders and business owners here in Oklahoma and around the country. And so, like we always say, our mission is bigger than food, and be intentional with how you spend your money today. Thank you for joining the Bigger Than Food podcast. We hope you found inspiration in stories shared today. Remember, it's the courage to take action that drives real change in the world. Be sure to subscribe to the Bigger Than Food podcast for more conversations with movers and shakers who are shaping our tomorrow. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep making a difference.